I walked into the courthouse to sign what I thought were amicable divorce papers. I told myself it was just business, but within 30 minutes, my accounts were frozen and my life's work was labeled a disputed asset. Then my sister stepped forward. She rested a hand on her stomach and smiled like she held the key to my vault. "You will understand," she said. "We did this for the family. My name is Naomi Wexler." At 34 years old, I had built a life on the principles of precision and control. So when I walked into the Silvergate Superior Court that Tuesday morning, I treated it like a board meeting. I was there to sign an amicable divorce settlement with my husband, Caleb. I wore a white button-down shirt that I had ironed until the cotton felt like paper, and I kept my hair pulled back in a severe knot. I checked my reflection in the glass doors of the entrance. I looked untouchable. I told myself this was just a transaction. It was a pruning of dead weight to allow for new growth. I stopped at the coffee kiosk in the lobby for a black Americano. I needed the bitterness to sharpen my focus. I tapped my platinum card against the reader and waited for the familiar chirp of approval. Instead, the machine emitted a harsh, dissonant buzz. "It happens," the barista said, holding out the machine. "Try inserting the chip." I did. The machine buzzed again. A message flashed in red letters on the small LCD screen. "It says declined, ma'am," the barista said. She looked at me with that specific brand of customer service pity that makes your skin crawl. "That is impossible," I said. My voice was calm, but a small spike of irritation pricked at my chest. "I have a credit limit that could buy this entire building." "Run it again." She did. Declined. My phone vibrated in my hand. I looked down and saw a notification from my bank. Account suspended per court order pending litigation. The air in the lobby seemed to vanish. I tapped the banking app icon. Access denied. I opened my email and found my inbox flooding with security alerts. Device logged out due to unusual activity. Admin privileges revoked. Biometric data mismatch. My digital life was dissolving in real time. I felt a cold sweat break out along my spine. I left the coffee on the counter and marched toward courtroom 4B. I pushed through the double doors, expecting to see our court-appointed mediator, a soft-spoken woman named Linda who smelled of lavender and compromise. She was not there. Instead, a man in a charcoal suit stood at the plaintiff's table. He had the posture of a shark in still water and eyes that looked like they had never blinked. I recognized him immediately. Silas Rourke. He was not a divorce lawyer. He was a corporate liquidator who specialized in hostile takeovers and reputational demolition. He was the kind of man you hired when you wanted to leave nothing behind but scorched earth. Caleb was sitting next to him. My husband, the man who had promised we would keep this civil. The man who had cried when we discussed separating was staring at the grain of the wooden table, refusing to lift his head. Behind him, in the gallery, sat my parents. Gordon and Marjorie were composed, their hands folded in their laps. They looked at me with blank expressions, calm and detached, as if they were waiting for the curtain to rise on a play they had already reviewed. "Your Honor," Silas said. His voice was smooth and terrifyingly deep. "We are filing an emergency ex parte motion to freeze all assets held by Ms. Wexler, including her controlling interest in Wexler Arcadia Group. We have reason to believe she is actively dissipating company funds to hide them from the marital estate." "That is a lie," I shouted, stepping past the bar. "I built that company from nothing." "This is a standard divorce counsel," the judge warned. He did not look at me. He looked at the paperwork Silas had already slid across the bench. It was a thick stack of documents, pre-filled and tabbed. The gavel came down. It sounded less like a judicial ruling and more like a door slamming on a vault. "Motion granted," the judge said. "Temporary restraining order on all accounts is effective immediately. A court-appointed receiver will be assigned to the business by noon today to prevent further malfeasance." I stood frozen. In less than 10 minutes, they had stripped me of my money, my company, and my voice. This was not a divorce. This was an ambush. I turned around, desperate to find logic in the madness. and my eyes locked on the back row. My younger sister, Brielle, stood up slowly. She was wearing a soft pastel dress that clashed with the sterile courtroom. She looked at me, and then she deliberately placed her hand over her stomach. A small, serene smile played on her lips. "You will understand. We did this for the family," she said. I felt the blood drain from my face as the trap finally snapped shut. Wexler Arcadia Group did not happen by accident. I did not inherit a legacy or stumble upon a lucky algorithm. I built it, brick by digital brick, creating a franchise system for logistics data that transformed how mid-sized retailers managed their inventory. It required 16-hour days and a level of discipline that alienated most people. But it worked. By the time I was 30, I was the CEO of a company valued in the mid-8 figures. I was proud of the steel in my spine, but my family saw it as a flaw to be corrected. Caleb entered my life like a balm for a burn. He was not threatened by my success. He seemed to revel in it. He was the listener, the one who would rub my shoulders after a crisis meeting and tell me I was carrying too much weight. "You have to let someone else handle the small stuff, Naomi," he would say, his voice low and soothing. "I am here to be your partner, not just your husband. Let me be the wall you lean on." I believed him because I was exhausted and he offered rest. Then there was Brielle. My younger sister had spent her 20s floating between failed startups and expensive hobbies funded by our parents. When she came to me 2 years ago, eyes wide and tearful, asking for a temporary role in my marketing department, I hesitated, but my parents, Gordon and Marjorie, intervened. They sat me down in their living room, flanked by photos of us as children, and told me I was being too hard. "Family helps family," my father had said, his tone heavy with disappointment. "You are so focused on profits that you forget blood. Give her a chance." So I did. I let Brielle in. I let Caleb in. And slowly, the dynamic of our lives shifted. Sunday dinners at my parents' house became a ritual of subtle erosion. We would eat roast beef and potatoes, and then, almost like dessert, the paperwork would appear. It was never anything alarming at first, just tax documents, insurance updates, or beneficiary adjustments. My father would slide a folder across the mahogany table with a casual wave of his hand. "Just sign this for the accountant. Naomi," he would say. "It is just a formality to bundle the family trusts. Do not overthink it." I used to read every line. That was my nature. But Caleb would sigh, shifting in his chair next to me. "Naomi," he would whisper, touching my arm. "Your dad is just trying to help us save on taxes." When you read every word like that, it makes them feel like you think they are criminals. "Don't you trust me?" That question was their weapon. It made me feel small and paranoid. So, to avoid the tension, to stop being the difficult daughter, I started signing. I signed waivers. I signed transfers. I signed a specific document that gave Caleb temporary power of attorney to handle banking matters while I was at a conference in Zurich. I remember seeing a name on the letterhead of that document, Silas Rourke. "Who is this?" I had asked. "Just a guy at the club who handles the boring compliance stuff," Caleb had said, shrugging. "He comes highly recommended. I should have looked him up. I should have trusted my gut." There were cracks in the facade that I chose to ignore. A few months ago, I walked into the living room and saw Brielle sitting on the sofa, holding Caleb's phone. She was scrolling through something, laughing a soft, intimate laugh that stopped abruptly when she saw me. She slid the phone into her pocket. Not his. "Just checking a meme Caleb sent me," she had said, her face flushing pink. I forced myself to smile and walk away. I told myself I was being jealous and irrational. But the clearest warning came 2 weeks before the divorce filing. I had arrived early for dinner at my parents' house. The front door was unlatched. As I walked down the hallway, I heard my mother's voice coming from the kitchen. It was not her usual doting tone. It was sharp and urgent. "The girl just needs to sign the updated amendment," she hissed. Once that is done, Silas can handle the rest of the extraction. I stepped into the doorway. What extraction? The silence that followed was instantaneous. My mother turned, her face rearranging itself into a mask of maternal concern within a second. "Oh, Naomi," she exclaimed, wiping her hands on a towel. "We were just talking about your father's dental surgery. The tooth extraction. It is going to be a nightmare." They smiled. Caleb smiled, Brielle smiled, and I, the fool with the empire, sat down and ate their food, never realizing I was the main course. I walked out of the courthouse and into the blinding midday sun, my hand gripping my car keys like a weapon. I needed to get to the office. I needed to shred the narrative they were building before it hardened into cement. I reached my sedan in the parking lot and pressed the unlock button on the fob. Nothing happened. I pressed it again. Harder. The car remained silent and dark. My phone vibrated. A text message from the leasing company appeared on the screen. Lease agreement terminated effective immediately due to critical credit risk assessment. Vehicle immobilized via remote protocol. Recovery team dispatched. I stood there, staring at my own reflection in the driver's side window. They had not just frozen my bank accounts, they had flagged my entire identity as radioactive. I checked my signal. 1 bar. I tried to dial my assistant, but the call failed instantly. A robotic recording played in my ear. "This device has been restricted to emergency services only per the account holder's request." I looked at the screen. My data was gone. My email app was grayed out. A banner notification from the company server lingered at the top: administrator privileges revoked due to legal hold. I felt a surge of panic rising in my throat, hot and sharp. I hailed a passing taxi and paid the driver with the $40 of emergency cash I kept in my wallet. "Wexler Arcadia Group headquarters," I told him. "And hurry." When we arrived, I marched straight to the turnstiles in the lobby. The glass building I had designed, the logo I had chosen, it all looked the same, but the atmosphere had shifted. I tapped my security badge against the sensor. The light turned angry red. A low, rejecting beep echoed in the quiet lobby. I tried again. Beep. "Ms. Wexler." I turned. It was Ralph, the head of lobby security. I had signed his paycheck for 5 years. I had sent flowers when his mother passed away. Now, he stood between me and the elevators with his arms crossed, looking at the floor. "Let me through, Ralph," I said. "It is a glitch." "It is not a glitch," Ralph said, his voice low. "I have a memo here. Temporary restraining order. You are banned from the premises until the board meets." "The board?" I laughed, a jagged, incredulous sound. "I am the chair of the board." "Not anymore," he said. He handed me a printed sheet of paper. It was an email blast sent to the entire company. "Effective immediately. Caleb Wexler is appointed interim CEO. Naomi Wexler has been placed on indefinite administrative leave pending an investigation into conflicts of interest and erratic behavior stemming from severe mental instability." My knees almost buckled. They were using the divorce, the stress they had manufactured, to paint me as mentally unfit. I turned and ran out of the lobby before I screamed. I took the taxi home, praying that my house key was still just a piece of metal and not something digital they could switch off. The house was silent. Too silent. I ran to the study and pulled the painting away from the wall to reveal the safe. The door was ajar. My stomach dropped. I pulled it open. Empty. The stock certificates, the original incorporation documents, the corporate seal, the deeds. Everything that proved I owned Wexler Arcadia was gone. Caleb knew the code. He had never used it before, but he knew it. My phone, functioning only on Wi-Fi now, pinged. A message from an unknown number. It was Silas Rourke. "Sign the stock transfer agreement to preserve your dignity. If you refuse, we will make the evidence public." Before I could process what evidence meant, a video call request came through. It was Brielle. My thumb hovered over the decline button, but a morbid compulsion made me answer. Her face filled the screen. She was in a car, the sunlight hitting her hair perfectly. She held up a black and white photo. It was a sonogram. "It is Caleb's," Brielle said. Her voice was thick with fake tears. "I am pregnant. Naomi, please. You have to stop this. If you drag this out, the stress, it will hurt the baby. You would not want that, would you? You are not that cruel." I stared at her. She was using an unborn child as a shield. She was weaponizing biology to protect a corporate theft. "You are sick," I whispered. "I am a mother fighting for her family," she replied, and the line went dead. Then, a final message arrived from my father. "The company is too much for you right now. You are not well. Family has to handle it." I sat on the floor of my empty study. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. They were not just taking my money. They were stripping me of the ability to fight. They had taken my resources, my reputation, my proof of ownership, and now they were taking my morality. They had turned me into a ghost in my own life. I did not go to a high-rise firm in the financial district. Those doors were closed to me now. Instead, I took a bus to a community legal clinic in a strip mall on the edge of town. I was looking for Kendra Pike. In the legal world, she was known as a bulldog who despised the kind of people my family pretended to be. Kendra did not offer me coffee or sympathy. She sat behind a desk piled high with files, wearing a hoodie under a blazer. She looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "I know who you are," she said, "and I know who represents your husband. Silas Rourke eats people like you for breakfast because you play by rules he burned 10 years ago. If you want me to take this case, you have to stop acting like a victim." "I am not a victim," I said, though my voice shook. "I am angry." "Good," Kendra said. "Use it. But use it like a scalpel, not a hammer. From this moment on, you do not send emotional texts. You do not plead with your sister. You become an analyst. I want the wet ink originals of every debt they claim you signed. I want the notary journals. I want the digital signature logs." I spent the next 48 hours in a small motel room, working off a prepaid laptop. I stopped looking at the divorce as a relationship ending and started looking at it as a forensic audit. The first crack appeared when I examined the timeline. The court filing claimed I had signed a promissory note for $200,000 on October 14th of last year. I pulled up my personal calendar archive. "Got you." I whispered to the empty room. On October 14th. I was not even in the state. I was in Chicago giving a keynote speech at a logistics summit. I had the plane ticket receipts. I had the hotel invoice. I had a geotagged photo of myself on stage. I had a video of the speech stamped with the time and date. I could not have physically signed a document in Silvergate that day. I kept digging. I pulled old financial reports that I had saved on a cloud drive they missed. I noticed a recurring line item for strategic consulting fees paid to an entity called Larkstone Advisory LLC. The amounts were small enough to avoid immediate scrutiny. $5,000 here, $8,000 there, but over 3 years. It added up to nearly $250,000. I ran a search on the business registry. Larkstone Advisory was registered to a residential address in a rundown suburb 2 hours away. The registered agent was a man named Earl. I recognized the name. He was my mother's second cousin, a man who had never held a steady job in his life. I drew a diagram on the back of a pizza box. The money left the company as consulting fees, went to the shell company, and then, based on the credit card statements I had managed to salvage before the lockout, it flowed right back out. It paid for my father's country club dues. It paid for my mother's designer handbags. It paid for the lease on a luxury SUV. My parents had not just turned on me recently. They had been embezzling from me for years. The loans they claimed I took out were just cover for the money they had already stolen. My screen flickered. A new email arrived in my encrypted inbox. The sender was anonymous, listed only as Gray Needle. "Be careful," the message read. "They do not just have lawyers. They have someone inside your system. They know you are looking at the logs." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the motel's air conditioning. I called Kendra immediately. I found the money trail, I said, and I can prove I was out of town for the big loan. It is fraud, Kendra. Straightforward fraud. It is a start, Kendra said, her voice crackling over the cheap burner phone. But do not get comfortable. You are touching the nerve now. When they realize you are not rolling over, they will stop coming for your wallet. What else is there? I asked. Your character, she said. They know they cannot win on the math if you get to court, so they are going to make sure you never get that far. They are going to kill you in the court of public opinion. Brace yourself. Naomi. It is about to get ugly. The attack did not stop at my bank accounts. It bled into the streets. 2 days after I visited the legal clinic, a notification popped up on my phone from a local business community group. It was an anonymous post titled "The Truth About Naomi Wexler Financial Predator and Family Manipulator." I stared at the screen as the view count ticked upward. The post detailed alleged tax evasion, unpaid debts to local vendors, and a horrifying, fabricated story about me stealing my grandmother's pension. Below the text, hundreds of comments were already festering. People I had known for years, neighbors, former classmates, even people I bought coffee from were piling on. I always knew she was cold. One wrote, "Rich people think they can get away with anything," said another. My phone began to ring, but it was not my friends defending me. It was my vendors. We have to suspend the contract. Naomi, my biggest logistics partner, told me, we cannot be associated with someone under active fraud investigation. It is a compliance issue. It is a lie, I said, gripping the phone until my knuckles turned white. You know me. Gary, we have done business for 7 years. I am sorry, he said, and the line clicked dead. Within 6 hours, I had lost 3 major contracts. My reputation, which had taken a decade to build, was evaporating like water on hot pavement. Then came the notification from the court. Silas Rourke had filed a new motion requesting to freeze my future assets and beneficiary rights. The wording was specific and chilling. It implied they knew I had potential capital they wanted to trap before I could even touch it. They were not just starving me. They were salting the earth so nothing could ever grow again. That evening, my parents cornered me. They demanded a meeting in the quiet corner of a hotel lobby, away from prying eyes. My mother reached across the low table and took my hand. Her skin was soft, but her grip was iron. We hate seeing you like this. Darling, she said, her voice dripping with poisonous sweetness. Just sign the stock transfer. Let Caleb manage the company for a few years until you are well again. We have arranged for you to keep a generous monthly allowance. An allowance? I pulled my hand away as if I had been burned. I am 34 years old. I own that company. You are unstable, my father said, sipping his scotch. Take the deal, Naomi, or lose everything. I walked out, but the assault was coordinated. An hour later, Brielle asked to meet me at a diner near my house. I thought she might apologize. I was wrong. She sat in the booth, tears streaming down her face, attracting looks from the other patrons. I am pregnant. And you are making this so hard, she sobbed, loud enough for the waitress to hear. If you keep suing us, if you drag Caleb into court, the stress is going to hurt the baby. You are destroying my child because you are jealous. I felt the eyes of the diner patrons boring into my back. I was trapped between rage and a sickening sense of guilt. Brielle, stop it, I hissed. Then stop fighting. She cried. Let it go. I left her there, shaking. I went back to the motel, feeling like a pariah. That was when the email from Silas arrived. It contained no text, just a video file and a PDF attachment. I clicked play. The footage was grainy and dark, stamped with a date from 3 nights ago. It showed a parking lot. A woman who looked exactly like me, same height, same hair, wearing my signature trench coat, was leaning against the hood of a car. She was signing a stack of documents handed to her by a man who looked like a notary. Attached to the email was a PDF, a signed confession, where I admitted to transferring the shares to Caleb to cover my debts. No, I whispered. I was not there. I looked at the date. 3 nights ago. I had been at home, alone. I had been drinking wine and staring at the wall. I had no witnesses, no receipts, no alibi. I frantically logged into my home security app to pull the footage from my doorbell camera. It would prove I never left the house. I scrolled to the date. The timeline was solid blue until 10 at night. Then, there was a gap. 2 hours of footage were missing. Data deleted by admin user. Someone had remote access. They had erased my only proof. I called Kendra, my voice trembling. They have a video, I said, and they wiped my security logs. I was home alone. Kendra, I cannot prove I was not in that parking lot. Kendra was silent for a long moment. They are smart, she finally said. They chose a night you were isolated. They have a witness, a signed confession, and video evidence. They are going to paint you as a liar who signed the deal and then got greedy. What do? I asked. We stop playing defense. Kendra said, if we go into that courtroom with just your word against a video, we lose. We need a knockout punch. We need something so undeniable that the judge cannot look away. I needed a key to a door they thought they had welded shut. I reached out to Miles Red, a former systems administrator at Wexler Arcadia. 2 years ago, I had paid for his rehab when everyone else wanted to fire him. He owed me, and, unlike my family, Miles understood loyalty. I can get you the access logs for the digital signature mainframe, Miles said, his voice crackling over the encrypted line. But Naomi, if they catch me, I am done. If they catch me, I am dead. I replied, just get me the logs. He sent the file 10 minutes later. I scanned the lines of code until my eyes burned. I was looking for the full equity packet, the specific set of documents Silas claimed I had signed months ago. I found it. The system showed a print command executed at 3 a.m, 2 days prior. It had been initiated by a user ID labeled CFO Temp. I froze. CFO Temp was the login credentials for Fletcher Dane, the interim chief financial officer the board had installed the moment I was locked out. The realization hit me like a splash of ice water. Fletcher Dane. I closed my eyes and saw him at my parents' garden party last summer. He had been holding a scotch, laughing at my father's jokes, clapping Caleb on the back. He had shaken my hand with a warm, grandfatherly grip. I had dismissed him as harmless social furniture, just another one of my father's golf buddies. But he was not harmless. He was the inside man. I called Kendra immediately. We need to subpoena the server hard drives, I said. Fletcher Dane printed the documents inside the executive suite 2 nights ago. He prepared the paperwork for the forgery. Kendra filed the motion within the hour. The response from Silas Rourke's office came back just as fast. Objection. System maintenance error. Data corruption has rendered the requested period unrecoverable. They are deleting everything, Kendra said. They are burning the house down to hide the bodies. Let them burn it, I said, staring at my laptop screen. I found something they forgot to scrub. I opened the PDF file of the confession Silas had emailed me, the one that supposedly proved I had admitted to the transfer. I right-clicked and opened the metadata properties. My heart hammered against my ribs. The created date was not 6 months ago. It was yesterday. I zoomed in on the notary seal stamped at the bottom of the page. To the naked eye, it looked official, but under 400% magnification. The flaws screamed at me. The font of the notary's license number was slightly pixelated, while the signature line was crisp. The blue ink of the stamp had no bleed into the paper grain. It sat flat on top of the pixels. It is a collage, I whispered. They photoshopped the seal from an old document onto a new one. I felt a cold, sharp clarity take over. This was not just a theft, it was a production, and every production needs a budget. I went back to the financial records I had mapped out from Larkstone Advisory. I searched for smaller, erratic outflows. I found a wire transfer sent last week. It was for $5,000, labeled simply as reimbursement. The recipient account belonged to Brielle. I stared at the screen. My sister, who claimed to be pregnant with my husband's child, was receiving payments from the same shell company that paid my father's club dues. Why would they pay her? I asked myself. Brielle had never been good with money, but she was an actress, a failed one, but an actress nonetheless. The tears in the diner, the hand on the stomach, the dramatic timing in the courtroom, it was all too perfect. Then the darkest thought of all took root in my mind. I thought about the timing. I thought about Caleb's terrified silence. I thought about Brielle's insistence that the stress would hurt the baby. It is not an affair, I said, my voice trembling with rage. It is a prop. The pregnancy was not a mistake. It was not a betrayal of passion. It was a calculated legal instrument designed to force a moral surrender. They were not just lying about the money. They were lying about life itself. I picked up the phone to call Kendra. Get ready, I told her. I know how to break them. We are not going to argue about accounting anymore. We are going to talk about biology. The memory hit me in the middle of the night, sharp and undeniable. It was a conversation from 2 years ago, right after I had secured the Series B funding for the company. Caleb had come home with a bottle of champagne and a strange, relieved smile. He had held my hands and told me that he wanted to support my ambition fully. I took care of it. Naomi, he had whispered, kissing my forehead. I had the procedure, a vasectomy. I know you are building an empire, and I do not want anything to slow you down. No accidents. Just us. At the time, I had been grateful. I had seen it as the ultimate sacrifice of a supportive husband. Now, sitting in the dim light of the motel room, I realized it was the smoking gun. I called Kendra immediately. It was 4 a.m, but she picked up on the second ring. You better have a body. Kendra grumbled. I have a medical impossibility. I said, Caleb had a vasectomy 2 years ago. If Brielle is pregnant with his child, then one of 2 things is happening. Either she is lying about the father, or she is lying about the pregnancy. By noon, Kendra had secured the medical records through a discovery motion regarding Caleb's health status, which was relevant to his claim of being the primary caregiver for a future child. The document was clear. Patient Caleb Wexler. Procedure vasectomy. Date November 12th. 2 years ago. Post-op analysis. 0 sperm count. He is sterile, Kendra said, looking at the file. So, explain the sonogram Brielle waved in your face. It is a prop, I said, feeling a wave of nausea. They are not just stealing my company. They are scripting a soap opera to justify it. I dug deeper. If Brielle was faking the biology, she needed help. I scoured the financial data for payments to medical facilities. I found a contract Brielle had signed with a private clinic called Oakwood Reproductive Health. It was not for prenatal care. It was for hormone replacement and cycle regulation. The date on the contract was 3 weeks prior, exactly when they started planning the takeover. Then, the final piece fell into place. My encrypted email pinged with another anonymous tip, this time from a hushmail address. It was a screenshot of an internal clinic note. Patient requested official pregnancy verification letter for urgent family and legal purposes. Note, ultrasound image provided for file is generic stock imagery per client request. I slammed the laptop shut. They were pumping my sister full of hormones to bloat her body and mimic symptoms, all to create a moral shield. It is disgusting, I said, pacing the small room. They are using a fake pregnancy as a weapon. They are trying to shame me into signing over my life because I am the barren, jealous sister attacking a pregnant woman. Brielle, how could she do not get emotional, Kendra warned. This is our leverage, but we cannot walk into court and scream that she is faking it. That makes you look crazy. We have to let them present it. We have to let them commit perjury on the record. I am not going to attack the child, I said, my voice cold, because there is no child. I am going to attack the lie. Do not use a pregnancy as a hammer to nail my coffin. I went back to the paperwork Silas had sent me, the settlement agreement they were so desperate for me to sign. I read the fine print with fresh eyes. Hidden in Clause 42, buried under legal jargon, was a provision that chilled my blood. Upon execution of this transfer, the signatory irrevocably waives all voting rights in perpetuity and agrees to a binding covenant not to sue for any past or future claims regarding corporate governance. They know, I realized, they know the pregnancy story will fall apart eventually. This clause, it is the fail-safe. If I sign this because I feel guilty about the baby, I lose the right to sue them when I find out the baby never existed. I looked at the wall where I had taped up the timeline of their betrayal, the fake video, the stolen money, the hormone injections, the vasectomy. It was a house of cards held together by my own silence. "Are you ready?" Kendra asked. "Let them come." I said, "Let them bring the video. Let them bring the sonogram. Let them bring the tears. I am going to let them walk right into the trap they built for me." Kendra filed the motion at 9 a.m. It was a request for an emergency evidentiary hearing regarding the authenticity of the plaintiff's exhibits and their standing to sue. We were not asking for the company back yet. We were simply asking the court to look at the weapon they had used to shoot me. I spent the rest of the day in the motel room, turning the bed into a staging ground for the truth. I did not have their dramatic flair, so I relied on the mundane. I organized my plane tickets to Chicago. I printed the itemized bill from the hotel where I had stayed during the alleged signing of the loan documents. I downloaded the raw video file of my keynote speech, time-stamped to the second. I printed the termination letter from the car leasing agency and the notification of my frozen accounts. It was a mountain of administrative paper, boring and undeniable. Then I found the line item that made the irony of the situation almost unbearable. I was tracing the outflows from Larkstone Advisory when I saw a wire transfer for $50,000. The recipient was Rourke and Associates. My parents had not even paid for their own hitman. They had embezzled money from my company, washed it through their shell firm, and used it to hire the lawyer who was currently destroying me. I was literally funding my own execution. Miles Red sent me one final piece of the puzzle. It was a server log detailing the remote access to my home security system. "Look at the IP address," I whispered to myself. The command to delete the footage of me being home alone had not come from a hacker in a basement. It had originated from a static IP address assigned to the executive suite at Wexler Arcadia. Someone had sat in my chair, in my office, and erased my alibi while likely drinking my coffee. I sat down to write my affidavit. I stripped it of all emotion. I did not use adjectives. I did not talk about betrayal or heartbreak. I wrote it like an audit report. On October 14th, I was in Illinois, Exhibit A. On November 1st, funds were transferred to Larkstone, Exhibit B. It was cold, hard logic. It was the only language that mattered now. My phone lit up on the nightstand. It was a message from Brielle. "Sign it. Naomi. Consider it a gift for your nephew." I did not reply. I took a screenshot and uploaded it to the secure drive. 10 minutes later, Caleb messaged, "You always thought you were the smartest person in the room. You will lose." I stared at the words. For the first time, I saw him clearly. He was not grieving the end of our marriage. He was not afraid of losing his wife. He was terrified of losing control. He did not hate me because I was bad. He hated me because I was big, and he needed me to be small. The night before the hearing, the front desk clerk called my room. A courier had dropped off a package. I opened the manila envelope. Inside, there was a copy of my original birth certificate and a stack of private photographs I had kept in a locked drawer for years. They were intimate, personal images meant for no one but a husband. There was no note. They did not need one. The threat was explicit. "Sign the papers, or we will strip you naked in front of the world." I felt a moment of cold shock, but it passed quickly, replaced by a steely resolve. I did not cry. I did not panic. I walked over to where Kendra was reviewing files on the small table and tossed the envelope onto the pile of evidence. They just admitted to extortion, I said. Kendra looked at the photos, then up at me. She smiled, a sharp, dangerous thing. Then let us go make them pay for it, she said. Silas Rourke opened the hearing with a performance that deserved an award. He did not start with statutes or precedents. He started with a moral indictment. He gestured to the front row where Brielle sat, dressed in a modest gray cardigan, her hand resting protectively on her stomach. She wiped a tear from her cheek right on cue. The judge, a stern man in his 60s, looked from her to me with distinct disapproval. I was the cold executive. She was the vulnerable mother-to-be. Your Honor, Silas said, his voice low and grave. We are here because Naomi Wexler is a woman who values her bank balance more than her own flesh and blood. She agreed to transfer these shares. She admitted it. And now, she is using the court to renege on her promise because she cannot bear to see her former husband happy with her own sister. He dimmed the lights and played the video. On the large monitors, the grainy footage showed the woman who looked like me signing papers on the hood of a car. It looked damning. Then, Caleb took the stand. He looked shattered, his tie loosened, his eyes red-rimmed. Did Naomi agree to this transfer? Silas asked gently. Yes, Caleb said, his voice trembling. She said she wanted to make things right. She said she felt guilty about the divorce and wanted to secure the future for the baby. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles turning white. It was a lie so complete it was almost breathtaking. Kendra stood up. She did not look at Caleb. She looked at the judge. Your Honor, we move to dismiss these exhibits as fraudulent fabrications, Kendra said, strong words. Counsel, the judge warned. I have the receipts, Kendra replied. She plugged her laptop into the presentation system. The defense presents Exhibit C. This is the metadata from the electronic file of the so-called confession Mr. Rourke just emailed to my client. He claims this document was signed 6 months ago. However, the file creation timestamp is from 48 hours ago. Silas stood up, buttoning his jacket. Tech glitches are common. That proves nothing. Let us look at the notary seal, Kendra continued, ignoring him. She zoomed in on the screen until the seal was a blur of pixels. The license number belongs to a notary public named Martha Higgins. We checked the state registry. Ms. Higgins retired and surrendered her commission 3 years ago. It is physically impossible for her to have stamped this document. The air in the room shifted. The judge leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Mr. Rourke, the judge asked. My client perhaps used an old seal by mistake. Silas stammered, sweating slightly. But the intent remains. The defendant is hiding future assets. She is trying to bury her wealth before the child is born. Kendra did not let up. She called our handwriting expert to the stand. The expert, a dry woman with thick glasses, pointed to the signature on the confession. Here, she said, pointing to a jagged line in the loop of the N. This is a pen lift, and here is a tremor. This signature was not written fluently. It was traced. It is a crude forgery. And finally, Kendra said, turning to me, the plaintiff claims this video was taken on October 14th, the date on the document. If you look at the screen now, you will see Naomi Wexler on stage at the Midwest Logistics Summit in Chicago on that exact date, at that exact time, unless she can teleport. She was 500 miles away from that parking lot. The courtroom went silent. The video evidence had collapsed. Silas lost his composure. He slammed his hand on the table. This is absurd, he shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. She is a manipulator. She is a greedy, vindictive woman who will say anything to keep her money. She manipulated her parents. She neglected her husband, and now she is lying to this court. It was the wrong move. The venom in his voice stripped away his professional mask. Kendra waited for the echo of his shout to die down before delivering the final blow. "Speaking of money," Kendra said, her voice deadly calm, "we have traced the flow of the $200,000 Mr. Rourke claims my client borrowed. The money did not go to company operations. It went to Larkstone Advisory, a shell company." She flashed a spreadsheet onto the monitors. "And from Larkstone," Kendra continued, "the money paid off the credit card debt of Gordon and Marjorie Wexler. It paid for a membership at the Silvergate Country Club. And, most interestingly, it paid a $50,000 retainer fee to the law firm of Rourke and Associates." A gasp rippled through the gallery. The judge slowly turned his head toward Silas. "Mr. Rourke," the judge said, his voice dangerously soft, "are you telling me that you are being paid by the opposing party's embezzled funds to sue her for the return of those same funds?" Silas opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He blinked rapidly, looking from the judge to my parents in the back row. For the first time, the shark looked like he had swum into a net. He realized, too late, that this was not a divorce hearing anymore. It was a crime scene, and he was holding the weapon. The doors of the courtroom swung open, and the bailiff called a name that made my father flinch: Fletcher Dane. The interim CFO walked to the stand looking like a man marching to the gallows. He was not built for perjury. Under Kendra's relentless questioning, he lasted less than 5 minutes. I only printed the equity packet because Gordon asked me to," Fletcher stammered, wiping sweat from his forehead. "He said it was just to prepare for a transition. I did not know they were going to backdate it. I swear." A murmur rippled through the room. My parents sat stone-faced, but Silas looked like he was trying to become invisible. Kendra did not stop. She projected a new document onto the screen. "This is an invoice from a local casting agency," she said. "It is for a body double actress, paid for by Larkstone Advisory on the exact same day the parking lot surveillance video was filmed. The money used to pay for this actress came directly from Naomi Wexler's corporate account." Silas stood up to object, but I stood up with him. I turned my eyes directly to Caleb. "Forget the actress," I said, my voice cutting through the room. "Let us talk about the baby." Objection. Silas shouted. "Caleb," I said, ignoring the lawyer, "you had a vasectomy 2 years ago. We have the medical records. So, unless this is a miracle of biblical proportions, how exactly did you get my sister pregnant?" Caleb turned the color of ash. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. Suddenly, a sob broke the tension. Brielle stood up, her hands trembling as she clutched her stomach. "Stop it," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "There is no baby." "Okay. Are you happy?" "There is no baby." "Brielle, sit down," my mother hissed. "No," Brielle shouted, turning on our parents. "You said it would be easy. You said she would just sign the papers and leave. I am not going to jail for this. I was just playing the part you wrote for me." The judge slammed his gavel down, the sound echoing like a gunshot. "Enough," he bellowed. "I have heard enough." He looked at Silas, then at my parents, with pure disdain. "This court finds clear and convincing evidence of a conspiracy to defraud the defendant, manufacture false evidence, and abuse the judicial process. The temporary restraining order is vacated immediately. Full control of Wexler Arcadia Group is restored to Naomi Wexler." He paused, his eyes narrowing. "Furthermore, I am referring this entire transcript to the District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges regarding fraud, forgery, and perjury. Mr. Rourke, you will report to the State Bar Association for a disciplinary hearing." My parents did not look at me as the bailiff moved toward them. They looked at the floor. The game was over. As the courtroom cleared, Caleb approached me in the aisle. He looked small. "Naomi," he whispered, "please, I was scared. They told me you were going to leave me anyway. Can we just talk? I can fix this. I looked at him and felt nothing. No anger, no love, just a cold, clinical detachment. There is no fixing this, I said. But there is a way to stay out of prison. You are going to sign a full affidavit detailing every step of this plot. You will give me everything on my parents and Silas. If you do that, I will not press for the maximum sentence against you. And us, he asked, a pathetic hope in his eyes. We are done. I said. I spent the next week cleaning house. I fired Fletcher Dane. I formally removed my parents from the board and barred them from the premises. I hired a forensic team to close every back door in the digital infrastructure. I established a legal defense fund for my employees to protect them from external manipulation. On my final day at the courthouse, I walked out into the sunshine. I pulled my phone from my pocket. It buzzed as the network reconnected. Dozens of messages flooded in. I saw a final text from Silas. We can settle this quietly. I did not reply. I blocked the number and deleted the thread. It felt like cutting out a tumor. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs and looked up at the security camera mounted above the entrance. I signed the last document in my hand. It was not a surrender. It was a civil lawsuit for $10 million in damages and a permanent restraining order against my entire family. I looked straight into the lens, knowing they would review this footage later. I am not signing to disappear. I whispered to the camera. I am signing to make sure you pay for every single second. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please leave a comment below and share your thoughts on the ending. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Lily Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach even more people. Your support means the world to me.